It is 24 minutes past 1, and Kenneth Smith, convicted murderer on death row, has become the first person in the world to be executed with nitrogen.
Yes, the new method, praised by State Attorney as perhaps the most humane method of execution ever devised, amounted to what some have called torture.
Yes, according to witnesses, the execution didn't take the few minutes that it was expected. Instead, 22 minutes, and Smith appeared to shake and writhe, sometimes pulling against the restraints.
Yes, that was followed by several minutes of heavy breathing too. Now we're going to have a debate. Joining us now is the former Cabinet Minister Anne Widdecombe and Vice Chair at Ministry of Defence Research Ethics Committee, Professor David Albert Jones. Very good to see you both. Thank you very much for joining us. Anne, come on, give us the case for bringing back capital punishment.
Well, the case I've always made is based on deterrence. I'm not interested in it as a retribution, no interest in that at all. But in the 5 years after the abolition of the death penalty in this country, statistics were still kept divided into murders that would have been capital and murders that would not have been capital, that is, would not have attracted the death penalty. We don't do it now, it's all lumped together. That's what we did for 5 years after the abolition of the death penalty. And capital murders in those 5 years went up 125%. So there was also an enormous rise in crime, I think it was about 40%, where firearms were actually taken on robberies. Now, therefore, to my mind, there is a very clear deterrent value to capital punishment. If there is a deterrence, then it saves completely innocent lives, and therefore I am in favour of it. But it's not coming back, let me say that right away. That's why when I was Shadow Home Secretary, I didn't waste time on it, because I knew it wasn't coming back. But that's why I think it should.
Well, Professor David Albert Jones, what do you make of that it was an effective deterrent while we had it?
Yeah, so another news item which has been taking up several weeks now has been a miscarriage of justice involving literally hundreds of postmasters. And miscarriages of justice don't only occur in this area, but we have seen them in regards to terrorist cases. We have seen them in regards to murders. If you have a miscarriage of justice and you have executed the person who is wrongly accused, then there is no way to right that wrong.
So you think there's always a chance that we could have got the wrong person, and therefore, would you say it is barbaric, Professor?
Well, it's barbaric to kill the innocent, certainly. I mean, also there is another question.
But the guilty, is it barbaric to kill someone if you've got them banged to rights and you know you know they're guilty, 100% guilty? So
there's two things here. Firstly, I'd say you can't have a law which is only based on the nice, clean cases. Difficult cases make bad law. You can say, oh, in this one particular case, this I know. But there will be cases which will go through where people are innocent and then they are convicted, even if that's an exception. And the notion that the state would execute someone who is innocent, I think, is barbaric. But I think even with the guilty, I don't think the state should be in the business of killing people if there is an alternative. And I do think that imprisonment is an alternative. I mean, whether we get the tariffs for imprisonment right and whether we release people who are dangerous, who shouldn't be released, is a different question. But we can keep people in prison. And if we can keep people in prison, then to execute them, I think you don't use lethal means if non-lethal means would do.
And Widdecombe, what do you make of that? When we had capital punishment, we did get it wrong. There are cases of people who were subsequently found to be innocent who the state killed. Surely that's unjustifiable.
If you actually look at that, in the last act that was passed that governed who could and could not be executed, which was in the 50s, there's only been one case where somebody who really was innocent was hanged. There's been a lot of controversy that said Henratty was innocent. He wasn't, as was proved. How was it proved when DNA came in? And if we'd had DNA in the Timothy Evans, Reginald Christie case, where an innocent man really was hanged, if we'd had it then that miscarriage of justice wouldn't have taken place. And I'm quite happy to have a law that says you have to have DNA evidence before you can apply the capital penalty. But I go back to my point. You cannot dismiss the innocent lives that are lost if it really is a deterrent. And it wasn't a small rise in those 5 years. It was 125%. It's a deterrent. That's the moral argument for it.
Yeah, David, do you accept that argument that it works as a deterrent?
Well, it's very difficult. You have a period where crime is going up, and then you say these crimes are going up. You have just this 5-year period. We don't. It's difficult with statistics. It's difficult with statistics to show that. I mean, do we have now more capital type murders than we would have had then? What kind of what sorts of things would it be a deterrent for, and what not? If you've got people who are willing to blow themselves up on the tube, then they're not going to be worried about being executed. So it's not a deterrent for them. So there are people who are certainly not deterred. There's a big question about playing with data. And there's a fundamental thing that we did get things wrong. Birmingham 6, we got that things wrong. They are precisely the kind of people who would have been executed.
And you're shaking your head there, head in your hands.
Yeah, I was a bit, because obviously you cannot compare, if you're looking at the impact of the death penalty, and if that's your only question, you can't compare statistics from the 1950s with statistics, or it was the 60s then, the 1960s with statistics now, because there's been, as David's rightly pointed out, a whole number of social factors that have changed. But if you're looking at something's impact, you look at the immediate impact. That was why, for those 5 years, those figures were collected, because they were actually analysing the immediate impact. I mean, over time, other factors come in. So, I mean, I still stand by that. As I've said, DNA has made an enormous difference to how we really can be certain of guilt. And I do believe, therefore, that it would be safe to restore it. Having said that, my opponent will be very glad. No, I don't think it's ever going to come back. And I don't think it's ever going to be restored.
We've only got 30 seconds left, so final word must be to you, Professor David.
Well, you say it's not coming back, but euthanasia is around in various places, and there are people in prison who are having their lives ended in prison because they would prefer that than they would to complete their sentence. And that's happening in Spain and in other countries. So we might get it back by euthanasia.
Well, that's an interesting point.
Very interesting point.
Throwing that in at the end.
What a curveball.
What a curveball there. Thank you very much indeed to both of you. Great debate. Former Cabinet Minister Anne Widdecombe, thanks for your time, and Vice Chair at the Ministry of Defence Research Ethics Committee, Professor David Albert-Jones. I think they covered all the main arguments.
They did.
There.
I think that's a fascinating final point to end on. We might have to get these two contributors back because,
Absolutely.
my goodness, a death penalty by the back door.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about death penalty. I don't think I would bring it back, but let me know if you completely disagree. GBViews at gbnews.com. Something of the barbaric about it.
I know one thing for sure. If it were to be brought back, the worst way possible would be the choice of the person imprisoned, which seems to be that euthanasia option. Oh, you get the choice, life in prison. It shouldn't be the choice of the accused.
But I guess if you've got a killer, that's the number one way to keep everyone else safe, I guess. But perhaps not. Let us know. We are getting lots of emails on this.